Today we are critiquing a piece that uses public reactions to Ariana Grande as a jumping-off point to explore celebrity therapists, cultural nihilism, and the ethics of self-destruction. And diving right in, the narrative structure attempts to bridge two vastly different scales of discourse, leaping from celebrity gossip to sweeping philosophical claims about cultural nihilism, which really strains the overall cohesion of the argument.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, jumping straight from pop culture into heavy philosophy it's quite a leap.
Exactly. The weakness here is that the piece begins by examining these highly specific, pop culture moments, like Ariana Grande's RM Beauty TikTok, or that time she was sitting in a guitar case, and her 2014 baby talk phase with Big Sean.
Right, all super specific tabloid stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But then it suddenly makes this massive leap to profound existential topics like medical assistance in dying, abortion, and suicide prevention.
Oh, wow. That's a huge pivot.
Right? So this abrupt scaling from dissecting a celebrity's lollipop photo to debating the sanctity of human life creates a really jarring reader experience that lacks adequate connective tissue.
I totally get why a writer would want to try that, though. I mean, stark juxtaposition is like a classic literary device, right?
Oh, sure.
Like smashing low-stakes internet culture against high-stakes philosophy can be a great way to just, wake a reader up.
It definitely can be, yeah. But only if you're clearly signaling that you're writing an absurdist or like a highly stylized piece.
Right. And this one isn't.
No, the material makes a strong case for cultural apathy by highlighting extreme fan comments. But as an editor, I notice the pacing of this leap feels completely unearned. The goal of this material is to make a deeply sincere argument.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered how this abrupt transition might undermine the philosophical weight of the conclusion.
That is the exact problem. When you ask a reader to fundamentally reconsider their moral baseline, you have to manage their cognitive load. Right now, the piece spends its early real estate just submerged in hyper-specific minutia.
Like the guitar case picture?
Yes. So the reader is anchored in the mindset of a gossip columnist. And then, without a single warning sign, the next paragraph just drops them into debates about state-sanctioned euthanasia.
It's a total genre bait and switch. Because the human brain, it doesn't just passively absorb text, It actively predicts what's coming next based on context.
Right, exactly.
So if I'm reading about a 2014 baby talk phase, my brain is primed for entertainment analysis. When the text suddenly demands I evaluate medical ethics, the predictive engine in my brain just, stalls out.
It stalls out completely. I haven't been given the intellectual baseline to process that shift. So the suggestion here is to create a robust, graduated transition that uses the specific reactions of the fan base as a narrative bridge between the celebrity case study and the broader philosophy.
Okay, I understand the desire for a bridge, but if we spend a whole paragraph analyzing random fan comments, do we risk losing focus on the main subject?
How so?
Fans are a sideshow, right? The cultural apathy is the main event. How do you use them without just derailing the pacing entirely?
By treating the fan base as a microcosm of the cultural apathy you want to critique. The material already has the perfect raw ingredient for this, actually.
Oh, really? What is it?
The author mentions an Instagram post by Grande's therapist, Terry Cole, which says something like, "Not everyone will like the healthier version of you. That's okay. Get healthier anyway."
Okay, yeah, I remember that quote.
Right. So as a concrete example, instead of just tossing that quote in and moving on, you dedicate a specific transitional paragraph to analyzing the comments defending Grande's autonomy.
Ah, I see.
You unpack how fan discourse around her therapist directly reflects the modern live and let die interpretation of autonomy.
You look at the mechanics of their defense. Like, the fans are defending her right to define her own reality, even if her physical appearance is prompting public concern.
Yes, exactly. You use those specific fan quotes to naturally introduce the heavier concepts of made and absolute bodily autonomy before expanding to society at large.
That is incredibly smooth.
You guide the reader by saying, look at how the fans believe she has an absolute right to destroy her own body as long as she calls it healing.
Right. Introducing the live and let die logic on a small scale. And once the reader agrees with you on that pop culture scale, you seamlessly widen the lens.
Precisely. You say, this isn't just happening in Instagram comments. This is the exact same logic currently being used to justify medical assistance in dying.
Wow. Yeah, you're proving to the reader that these two completely disparate worlds are governed by the exact same cultural current.
Once the structural bridge connects the pop culture observations to the philosophical conclusions,
The underlying evidence supporting the celebrity critique must be fortified to maintain the author's credibility.
Right, because right now the reader crosses that bridge, but the foundation is, well, it's a bit shaky.
It's very shaky. The weakness here is that the text relies heavily on unverified speculation presented as definitive fact.
You're talking about the clinical claims, right?
I am. It explicitly diagnoses the subject with an eating disorder. The text literally says, I do think she has an eating disorder, and it's beyond the point of denying it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big claim.
And it doesn't stop there. It traces it to sleep training based on mom forum rumors.
Wait, really? Mom forums?
Yeah, literally tracing a grown adult's behavior to infant sleep training theories pulled from the internet. And it labels therapist Terry Cole a charlatan, guilty of ethics breaches, based merely on what the author calls a brief inquiry.
That is, that's risky.
Treating armchair diagnoses as factual premises totally weakens the intellectual rigor of the piece. As I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the public is enabling a tragedy, but the foundation rests heavily on the author's own psychological diagnoses of the subject.
That makes sense. But could the evidence also support a different conclusion, like the dangers of parasocial relationships?
It definitely could.
Because I'm wondering, is the connection between her physical appearance and infant sleep training fully established in the material, or is that an area to potentially bolster?
It's definitely not established. And honestly, it derails persuasion. The moment a writer says, I think she has an eating disorder, they step out of the role of cultural critic and into the role of medical professional.
Right. And the reader instantly knows you cannot ethically diagnose a stranger through a screen.
Exactly. The reader's skeptical alarms go off. If your entire sweeping argument relies on a diagnosis you can't clinically prove, the reader can dismiss your profound philosophical conclusion as easily as they dismiss a tabloid rumor.
That is a really fascinating psychological block. Like, the reader might actually agree with the premise privately, but the moment you state it as an objective medical fact without a chart to back it up, they reject the essay purely on logical grounds.
You have created an artificial vulnerability in your own argument.
Yeah, you handed them a reason to stop listening.
So the suggestion here is to shift the analytical framing from asserting objective medical facts about the celebrity to analyzing the cultural narratives and rumors surrounding her.
So it's essentially the difference between playing doctor and playing sociologist.
That is the perfect way to put it.
A doctor has to prove the disease exists in the patient, but a sociologist just has to prove that the crowd believes the disease exists. And then they analyze the crowd's reaction to their own belief.
Which is so much easier to prove. So for concrete examples, instead of writing, I do think she has an eating disorder, you reframe it to say, the prevailing public consensus has effectively diagnosed her with an eating disorder, which forces us to examine how society reacts to visible decline.
That is such a subtle but powerful pivot. You aren't claiming she has the disorder, you're claiming the public believes she does.
Right. Which is a provable fact. You can point to millions of tweets to prove that. And when discussing the sleep training theory, explicitly contrast the speculation from online forums with actual psychological consensus on childhood development.
So you don't present the forum theories as legitimate medical background.
Exactly. You frame those rumors as an example of public desperation. This demonstrates rigorous research rather than just repeating internet rumors.
It shows you're above the gossip cycle, just observing it. That framework applies perfectly to the therapist section too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't need to legally accuse a licensed professional of ethical breaches based on an Instagram post. You just analyze what her public-facing brand represents to a fan base looking for a savior or a villain.
Yes. Now, the tone is the last major hurdle here. The narrative structure attempts to bridge two vastly different scales of discourse, leaping from celebrity gossip to sweeping philosophical claims about cultural nihilism, which strains the overall cohesion of the argument.
Wait, you mean the tonal shift across the structure?
Sorry, I mean, the tone occasionally veers into dismissive or overly cynical terminology, which alienates readers who might otherwise engage with the deep moral questions being raised.
Right. The dissonance in the vocabulary.
Exactly. The weakness is the use of colloquial, loaded, or highly antagonistic phrasing. We are seeing terms like crazy mom forums, brain degradation, and nihilistic brain rot.
Yikes. Yeah, brain rot is pretty loaded.
It cheapens the gravity of the intended message. The piece ultimately wants to make a sincere point about personal duty, the sanctity of life, and communal responsibility. using internet slang to make this point creates a huge tonal contradiction.
Okay, so what I really like about this part is the intense passion behind the argument for communal responsibility. Let's look closely at the section discussing the shifting cultural baseline. The vocabulary choices here distract from the protagonist's, well, the author's, core philosophical challenge.
They totally distract from it.
Is there a risk that focusing solely on antagonistic language might overlook the nuanced tragedy of the situation? Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of a reader who is currently on the fence about this cultural shift?
That's the perfect angle. If I'm a reader on the fence about autonomy and I read the phrase nihilistic brain rot, my defensive shields immediately go up.
Oh, absolutely. I don't feel invited to reflect. I feel insulted. It shuts down the intellectual exchange entirely.
Which is the exact opposite of what a persuasive essay should do. It's like, well, using internet slang to deliver existential philosophy is like printing a legal summons in Comic Sans.
The Comic Sans analogy completely nails it. It just strips the authority right out of the message.
So the suggestion is to elevate the vocabulary to match the gravity of the concluding themes, replacing dismissive slang with precise, critical language that maintains an objective, empathetic distance.
So how do we ground this in the text? What are some concrete examples of those upgrades?
First, replace brain degradation with severe cognitive impacts of malnourishment.
Oh, I like that. It forces the reader to sit with the uncomfortable medical reality rather than brushing past the sensational buzzword.
Exactly. Then swap the dismissive crazy mom forms for fringe online parenting communities.
That small shift completely alters the authority of the writer. Crazy mom forums sounds like a personal vent session.
Right.
But fringe online parenting communities sounds like measured sociological analysis. You're acknowledging the extremity without losing your professional distance.
And finally, upgrade nihilistic brain rot to deepening cultural apathy.
Deepening cultural apathy? Yeah, that phrasing has actual weight. It aligns the stylistic tone with the author's ambitious philosophical goals without losing the piece's critical edge.
It tells the reader, I am taking this issue incredibly seriously, and I expect you to take it seriously too.
It really respects the reader's intelligence.
Exactly. So, to recap, the critique identifies 3 primary areas to strengthen the material. First, graduating the structural pacing to smoothly bridge pop culture analysis with existential philosophy.
Right, building that staircase.
Second, shifting the evidence from definitive armchair diagnoses to an analysis of cultural narrative. And third, elevating the vocabulary to avoid internet slang that undermines the piece's philosophical weight.
The core argument here about our duty to one another is just so vital. These actionable steps are really just about removing the friction so that message can shine through.
We highly encourage the listener to apply these actionable steps, refine the piece, and submit the revised work back to the critique for further exploration.